Welcome to Design for Learning, a podcast from Notre Dame Learning. I'm your host, Jim Lang. This semester I have been taking a self-paced online course on learning led by Barbara Oakley, which is fantastic and something I really recommend to our listeners. It will be in the show notes. So I've learned a lot and I really enjoyed the experience, but still doesn't quite feel the same to me as walking in a physical classroom, sitting down with other humans and having those kinds of informal encounters that we have. For example, as we're walking out the classroom doorway or like seeing someone on campus and having informal conversations with people. So it just didn't feel the same to me in that one area. So I'm learning a lot, but I'm kind of missing that in-person interactions with people in the physical classroom. So it's got me thinking about the ways to build community among teachers and students when we are sort of all sitting behind screens. And so what can make that happen and why does it matter? Today we're going to discuss that question with Rebecca Glazier, who is a political science professor in the School of Public Affairs at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. She studies the scholarship of teaching and learning and is passionate about improving the quality of online education. She's the author of Connecting the Online Classroom, Building Rapport Between Teachers and Students, which is published by Johns Hopkins University Press in 2021. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And I love that introduction you gave because it really shows how online learning can increase access. You get to take a class that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to take. But also, it has this big problem of people not feeling connected to each other.
I love that because it puts the focus here on a positive way of thinking about online teaching and learning. And we're talking about that subject this month because we know that many instructors teach courses online in the summer. And we have a great program for that here at Notre Dame. Let me start by asking you what your journey has been like through online teaching and learning and what got you interested in this subject.
Absolutely. So for me, it has been quite a journey. Like a lot of online instructors, I came to teaching online with no experience at all. I had never taught an online class before. When I graduated with my PhD and I started teaching, I had a couple classes in person, and then my university just said, and here's an online class. I had never even taken an online class before. So I was definitely thrown into the deep end right away. And it took me probably longer than it should have, a few semesters to figure out that even though I was teaching my in-person Introduction to Political Science class with the same textbook and the same lectures and the same assignments as my online Introduction to Political Science class, my students were not learning the same things. They weren't achieving at the same levels. In fact, my online students, they were failing and they were dropping out at significantly higher rates. So that's when I really started to research this problem. I'm a social scientist trained as a political scientist. So I just looked at it like a puzzle and said, what's going on with my classes? Why are my online students not doing as well? And through conversations with other faculty, diving into the literature and talking with my students, I figured out that what was missing was exactly what you identified at the top there, that we didn't feel connected to one another. The students didn't see me as a real person who cared about their learning. I was just some professor, or even worse, like a automatic robot just grading their things off there in the void. And so I started a 5-year teaching experiment where I taught some classes with lots of connection and rapport and really reaching out to students and building that up. And then other classes, I just kept teaching the same way I had been. And that's where I really saw the data to show me that that connection really is key to helping online students succeed.
That must have been actually challenging for you to have these courses in which you were sort of aware of that maybe you could have been doing more stuff to build that rapport, and yet you really couldn't for the experiment, right? Was it sort of emotional stuff going on there for you during that sort of part of the process?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I would say that I had mixed emotions because I had designed the experiment so that the students that I was doing high rapport and high engagement with, that kind of took a lot of my time. And I couldn't just shoot off an email that said, read the syllabus. I had to, because of the experimental design, I had to write, thank you so much for asking. That's a great question. Look in the syllabus at this part and let me know if you need anything else. And so sometimes I was just gritting my teeth while I typed out those emails and I wanted to just say, read the syllabus, leave me alone. But once I saw the data start to come in, once I had enough that I could analyze it, I saw that difference that it was making for my online students. And I was like, I can't run this experiment any longer. I can't collect any more data because I feel like it's almost unethical to not be engaging with students in a way that I know helps them.
So I remember actually seeing your book title for the first time, and the word that really stuck out for me was rapport. And it's kind of unusual. That word was really not in the discourse in terms of online teaching and learning. So tell me about that word and how it helped you sort of get a better understanding of what you needed to do in your online courses.
Yeah, I actually pulled it from some research that's been done in in-person classes about that connection that's made between professors and students. And so rapport is really about letting students know that you care about their success and you're on their side. So it takes good communication, it takes giving students feedback, and it really takes acting like a human person. You have to show a little bit of yourself to make that connection with students. But once you do, the data shows that the students are more invested in the class and they're going to do better work and earn better grades.
So let me stay for just a second here in terms of your experience, like emotionally from this process. Like, did you have a sense when you started teaching online initially, like it wasn't as enjoyable as when you started building that rapport into it? Was that part of the process for you, feeling more connected and more just enjoying your online teaching more?
Yeah, that was actually a really nice side benefit because I went into it trying to help my students, right? I wanted more of my students to be learning, to be engaged, to stop failing and withdrawing from the class. But what I found was that I actually enjoyed teaching more when we had this high degree of rapport and connection. So when I first started teaching online, I would sometimes forget for entire days that I even had an online class. I wasn't
Oh,
checking in regularly with the discussion boards. I wasn't thinking of how to create new content that would really engage my students. I was loving teaching my in-person classes, but sometimes I would just forget about my online classes. And when I moved to this high rapport teaching strategy, it totally shifted. And the students met me there as well. So I wasn't bored and disengaged myself from the class, but the students were engaged and I was engaged, and everybody had a better teaching and learning experience.
that's really interesting because Flower Darby sometimes says one of her critiques is online courses is people treat them like like slow cookers, essentially, right? So you put this course in the cooker and then you just let it go, right, and assume it's going to sort of run itself. But and you're arguing actually, as she argues as well, you can't do that. You have to be in touch frequently and be checking with students, but also engaging with them on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point that you make is really an important one, that that is not only good for students, but it's also good for us as teachers because a lot of people who teach online say that they miss that contact, they miss that give and take of discussion. But if we can think of creative ways to make that happen in our online classes, our students will be better served by it and will like teaching those classes more.
Yeah, that's great. So, I'm a person who's always interested in what happens in the actual teaching process. So, I'm going to ask you to give some ideas about what would it look like to build that rapport in an online course.
Yeah, I have tons of ideas. And the great thing is that I'm always learning new ones from my colleagues, from just trying things out, from reading out there. There's lots of great people writing in this subject. Um, Advice that I would give is to start as early as possible with making these connections with students. So even before the semester starts, before the first day of class, do something to reach out to your students. Send them an email, send a message through the learning management system, but do something to let students know. Make a good first impression with them. Let them know that you're there to help them and you want them to succeed in the class. And I think that it's really important that when you're building rapport with students, that you're doing it your own way. So I'll have tons of examples, but those might not be the examples that fit your personality or work well with you. And the thing about connecting is that humans are really good at telling when people are not sincere and not authentic. So if you're just performing rapport in the way you think it should happen, the students aren't going to respond. But if you bring your real self, your authentic self, then they'll meet you there and it'll be a more engaging class. So I do that by like putting jokes in my syllabus, by recording videos that are friendly, telling them what's going on in my life. Sometimes I'll have a discussion thread that doesn't have anything to do with the content of the course. We'll just talk about the best place to get tacos or what our
Hmm.
favorite animals are. People will drop pictures of their pets in there, and all of that can make the course feel like more of a community.
Is typically, are you teaching synchronous or asynchronous courses?
Almost all of my classes are asynchronous, which makes it
Asynchronous.
even harder to connect with students.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, because in a synchronous class, you could sort of do that those joking asides, for example, in like a discussion. But this is even challenging, more challenging in these contexts, right?
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes we feel like we don't have to bring our full self to an asynchronous class. And I know that students who are taking asynchronous online classes sometimes feel like they're almost second class. They're not getting all the things that students who are in person are getting. And they're not getting like that casual contact that you talked about, chatting before and after class. And that's a lot of times where students learn about graduate school or about internship opportunities or are able to ask a question that they weren't comfortable asking in front of everyone else in the class. So I think that the key thing, especially in asynchronous classes, is for us as the professors to reach out to students. We need to make the first move. We need to email them, even if they're doing well in the class, and say, I wanted to check in on you. How are you doing? I see that you scored X. Great job. I'm so proud of you. Or I see that you haven't been in our discussions for a week or two. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do for you? Those kinds of proactive reaches can really make a big difference.
So let's be realistic here, though, because you're all these things you're saying, you actually referred to it earlier that the fact it takes more time, right? And so there's a little bit of that. We have to be aware of that, right? So more building rapport absolutely takes time for the instructor and investment of time and energy, right? I mean, there's no way to get around that, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the hard trade-off. But when I look at the data, as I was saying earlier, I feel like I can't teach any other way because I know how what a difference it makes for my students. There are some tips and tricks, some hacks that you can use to try to make things a little bit easier. Um, For instance, mail merge is a lifesaver for me. So I send my students lots of personalized emails that come directly to them with their first name in it, their scores, a comment specific to that score. But I do it through mail merge. So I just have to create the spreadsheet and then click go. And then 30 students all get a personalized email checking in with them. But I only had to write one email.
Yeah. Okay. So that's smart. So there's things that you can do for sure, right? Yeah. But again, going back to something you mentioned earlier, we can keep in mind the overall, the purpose of this, get more people into higher education, right? And so keeping that idea in mind, doing these courses is creating greater access for people who maybe can't come to this campus. And so I'm sure that helps you give you a sense of purpose when you're doing this work.
Yeah, online classes are a whole game changer for students who might be underserved by the traditional university system. Maybe because they're working or they have a family or they have other obligations that they can't always attend class. And even students who are living in the dorms and are on campus, they're taking online classes too because maybe they are on a sports team or maybe they want to leave for a study abroad but still want to knock out a summer class. So that flexibility is helping all kinds of students.
So you actually taught online courses both before and after the pandemic, right? I mean, so your journey's kind of crossed over that divide. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like what you've noticed that's different, or have we seen benefits from the pandemic in terms of online teaching and learning, or yeah, what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, online teaching during the pandemic was definitely different than online teaching before the pandemic. And I think that because of COVID-19, a lot of institutions and students and professors saw the value of online teaching, but also saw how hard it is to do it well. There are faculty who were all of a sudden thrown into online teaching with only a week to prepare, and it's really hard to do it well under those circumstances. So some students had poor experiences, some faculty had poor experiences because of that condensed time frame. But I think also people realized how beneficial it can be to students who aren't able to come to campus because they live too far away or they're immune compromised. There are all kinds of reasons why they would want to take those online classes, and they can be such a benefit for them in helping them finish a college degree.
Yeah. And so actually, do you have you're in Arkansas. Do you have people mostly are coming from Arkansas taking the classes, or do you people come from around the other parts of the country?
Yeah, at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, most of our students are from Arkansas, but sometimes we have students who, for instance, get deployed with the military or who
Uh,
move out of state halfway through their degree, and they're able to finish up online when otherwise they wouldn't be able to.
yeah. Okay. So we mentioned earlier the sort of the mail merge thing, right? And so it's kind of a way of using technology to support what you're trying to do here. So this brings to mind a subject which is on many people's minds right now: artificial intelligence. And I think when we're here we can think about both opportunities and challenges. And so give me your sense of what AI is doing to your teaching, or you're thinking about teaching, either online or even in your in-person classes at this point in your career.
I do think there's some really good research out there about why it is that students would do something that might be perceived as cheating. And a lot of times it's because they don't think that the assignment is important. It doesn't matter to them. They don't see it as meaningful for their learning experience. So I think on the front end, there's a lot that we can do as professors to try to create assignments that are more meaningful to students so that they don't feel like they're just jumping through hoops, that they're actually learning something. But on the other hand, I do think we can't pretend like AI doesn't exist. I think that policies that say absolutely no, you can't use it in any way, shape, or form in this class, I don't think they're realistic. So I've actually started in my intro level classes giving the students an AI assignment where they actually use it to take some steps at the beginning of some of their research or for a bigger assignment in the class. And then they have to write a one-page assessment of how well it did, where it might be useful. And then we talk about how maybe generating initial ideas, helping you find research, those could be ways that AI could help you, but how it's not ethical to have AI write your research paper.
Yeah. Have you done any much playing around with yourself, AI?
A little bit. I find that AI much better knows what I am looking for when I can't find an article than myself trying to enter Google search terms. So I'll just say,
Interesting.
hey, I remember there was this experiment. It involved Israelis and Palestinians. I think it was in the 1980s, and they'll know exactly what it was. But my search terms would never have found that.
Yeah.
So
So for your online courses, your asynchronous classes, what kind of assessments are you using? Are you using typically like papers, like discussion posts, tests? What are you doing in those? What's the mix of assessments?
yeah, I have a solid mix, including tests, writing assignments, and weekly discussion posts. In my 1000 level intro American National Government class, I really want to help those students stay engaged because a lot of them are taking online classes for the first time. A lot of freshmen, people who are in college in their very first or second semester. And so for that class, I have the students have a weekly discussion post and a weekly quiz. And the quiz is on their readings in the textbook, on the content that I do a video lecture on. But every week I add a question to the quiz that is just a check-in question, and they get a free point if they answer it. I ask them how they're doing. I might ask them what they're binge watching. I might ask them if they could only eat one dessert for the rest of their lives, what would it be? And that gives us a chance to build rapport and connect with
Yeah.
each other and just lets the students tell me if something is going on with them, something they're struggling with, and I can give feedback to them right there on their quiz.
Hmm. I mean, the answer to that question is obviously ice cream, chocolate ice cream. I mean, right? Okay, great. We get together and have ice cream together at one point. All right. So, so as I was saying, we have a program here, Summer Online, and there will always be new instructors teaching online for the first time, right? So you probably watched many instructors, and you remember your own journey, right? So like, what are the sort of the trouble areas that people often have as they're sort of starting to teach online, for example, things that maybe you remember being surprised at, or things that you really struggle with it in your early journeys, or you've seen other people struggle with in teaching online for the first time?
Yeah, I think that discussion boards is a real sticky place. So we want students to be engaged in discussing, but a discussion board just isn't the same as an in-class discussion in both positive and negative ways. Because in an in-class discussion, those smart but shy students may never say a word. But in an online post, they're able to take the time that they need to type out exactly what they want to say and because it's part of their grade and they're seeing every week they get graded on discussion, they're going to make sure that their post is in there. So students who otherwise wouldn't speak up, we're able to hear from them. But also, we sometimes have a tendency as professors to be very strict about the rules if we want students to be engaged, telling them, you need to make 2 posts, 1 reply, 1 original post. You need to do it on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. They have to be at least 100 words long. Those kinds of rules make students feel like they're just being controlled and like they're not really able to discuss in a natural way. So I dial back my rules. I just tell them I want them to post twice and they need to do it on different days. So I want them to come back to the discussion, not just post and then be done and leave. I want them to come back and engage. And I also work really hard to make sure that those discussion questions are things that the students might actually be interested in talking about. If there's a right and a wrong answer in your discussion, it is not going to help engage students. Another trick that I use is sometimes having the students be the discussion leaders. So different students are assigned throughout the semester to think of questions and to lead the discussion. And so they're much more invested that week. And the other students, hoping for good karma when it's their turn, are also more invested in the conversation.
That's great. I actually love the principle of you have to just come back once, right? And we could think about that like a in-person discussion, right? I don't want to just throw my idea out there and then just sit back for the rest of the discussion. I want to see how my idea evolves and gets responded to, and then I want to come back to that idea. So that's a great principle to think about. You have to come back one time, right? And check back in and see how the discussion evolved after your posts. That's an easy principle to kind of apply.
Yeah, the other thing with discussions is that sometimes professors either completely ignore the discussion themselves and never are in there, or else are super involved and replying to every single post. And honestly, I've been in both of those places. When I was a brand new online teacher, I was like, this is your discussion, have fun. And I didn't even go in there just at the end to grade it. And so I was completely absent from the students. We had no connection and discussion. I maybe overcorrected when I went to that rapport building, and I was in the discussion every single day, replying to every single student. And if my presence is so looming over the discussion, they might not be able to engage in the way that they really want. And it's exhausting for me as the professor. So what I do now, the happy medium that I've reached, is that I'll post every couple days and engage with students in the discussion. And then at the end of every week, I will look through and find a couple students who I thought really did a good job of contributing or added something meaningful. And I'll send them a personal email and tell them thank you for what they did and specify in that email how I saw them being really respectful or engaging in a thorny issue or providing useful links, so that they see that I'm really there, and then they're motivated to continue to participate well in discussions.
I love that because it's bringing together these two sort of things you're talking about here, the rapport and the sort of reaching out to individual students, along with make a good use of the discussion boards and try to incentivize students to contribute to those discussion boards. I agree with you that this is a problem area. There's a lot of discussion about the value of these boards, and especially now there's even more discussion about that because of AI. But I think one thing I've learned from our Canvas person here at Notre Dame is, you can have people contribute to a discussion board not only with text but also little videos. For example, like at our campus we have Canvas, and so you can have respond to a discussion board prompt by recording a 2-minute video of yourself talking, or even like uploading an audio file. And those are, people can be creative about how to use a discussion board. And so I think you're right. They can be valuable, but we have to be aware of their challenges and the things they can create for students.
Yeah, and video or audio, or sometimes I even ask students in those little quiz questions to just send me a GIF or send me an emoji of how you're feeling about this week. And it just gives them an alternative way to kind of engage and respond and also feel a little bit lighthearted and connected, like we're a community that's learning together.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so earlier I asked you to think about, some examples of building rapport in the classroom, and you kind of dodged the question, Rebecca. So I'm going to come back to this now because we're getting to the end of our time here together. So I want you to think about now, we're in the takeaway moment in the podcast. So I want you to think about, okay, so I'm teaching an online course, right? And I want you to give me 3 things to start with as a teacher that I could do in as I'm designing my course, my first days, or even like a practice throughout the entire semester. So give me some concrete ideas.
Okay. I don't want you to feel like you got cheated listening to this
Yeah.
podcast. Here's some concrete things that you can do. Um, Put a picture of yourself somewhere in the course. So it may be that your learning management system allows you to add a profile picture, but then students will see you as a real person every time that you respond to discussions or message them or reach out to them. So that's an easy thing that
I
you can
love
do.
it.
Something that is a little more intensive, but I love doing is hide an Easter egg in your syllabus. So what I do is I tell students, and it's not hidden. I have a whole heading that says, "Are you really reading this?" And then I tell them that if they've read the whole syllabus, to send me a picture of a panda in email. And that way, the students initiate contact and you get to reply back to them and welcome them to the class, say thank you for the adorable panda, invite them to reach out if they need anything else. And my inbox gets flooded with panda pictures. So that's one that I love doing also. And then the third thing that I would say is to send personal emails to students. So maybe it's using mail merge, maybe it's reaching out to students after they've participated in discussion boards. Maybe it's reaching out to them when they haven't participated and you're missing them. But anything that you can do that lets students know that you know them as an individual, you've graded their personal assignment, you've seen their participation, helps them feel like they can ask if they need help and like you're really invested in teaching them.
Okay, see, I'm glad I pushed you on that because those are great suggestions. And actually, I like the idea of the Easter egg. It's not like a little gimmick. It's also it initiates the conversation through email. Like they have to reach out to you, and then you can respond back to them. So it's a great little it's a trick, yes, but it's also a way of building that rapport. Starting the process of building that rapport.
And especially for first generation students or underserved students, sending that initial email to a professor can be a really high hurdle. So letting them send that initial email in a fun and frivolous way that doesn't feel intimidating to them can actually build a really good foundation for your class.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, to the three things you've already suggested, I'm going to add the fourth, which is adding that you already mentioned, which is to sort of send a note to students who did a good job in a discussion board post and said, I'm really glad that you posted this thing, or you did a good job of being respectful or pushing the conversation forward. And I think that's wonderful. That's a great suggestion as well for folks who are going to be teaching online for the first time. So thanks for those great suggestions.
No problem. Happy to do it.
All right. So thanks very much. We had a good rapport here. So I was glad to have an opportunity to chat with you, Rebecca, even though I know your work and so as we can create that same sense of connection here on the online. We're talking to each other on a podcast just as we can, and we're reading each other's work. So thanks very much for joining us today.
It's been my joy.
Designed for Learning is a production of Notre Dame Learning at the University of Notre Dame. For more, visit our website at learning.nd.edu.